Welcome, everyone. I am Kylie Heap. I'm Executive Director of Support After Abortion, and we are so grateful that you are here for our final webinar of the year. I can't believe it's the final one. This webinar is titled Year-End Reflection, Tools for You and Your Clients. Joining me for today's conversation are Michelle Maslin and Niles Pinkney. Michelle is our Communications Manager. Her work blends professional insight and compassion shaped by her own reproductive losses. Niles is our men's healing coordinator. He equips providers and facilitates virtual healing and paying forward his own healing after abortion. And Margaret, our creative marketing specialist, will join us during the role play and our Q&As. So without further ado, let's begin our time together.
Thanks, Kylie. Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're here for this one. Most of you spend your days holding space for other people's pain. By the time we get to this point in the year, you're often carrying a lot yourselves. Stories, grief, exhaustion, sometimes your own unfinished stuff. So this hour is not about setting goals or being more productive next year. It's not a do more, be more kind of webinar. It's about making a little room to notice what you've been carrying this year and offering you simple tools that you can use for yourself and with the people you serve. We're going to look at why reflection matters for the body, the brain, and grief work. And then we'll walk through a few practical handouts that you can use for reflection. One for you as providers and two versions for clients, secular and religious, and a gentle 30-day check-in you can come back to later. As we go through this webinar, you'll have chances to reflect for yourself along the way and engage with us in the chat. You're welcome to just sit and listen or use this time for your own year-end check-in as we go. We're going to close out with a few grounding exercises to help you segue back into the rest of your day. Before we jump into the tools and handouts, I want to pause on this question. Why does reflection even matter? Most of us believe reflection is good, in theory, but when you're really tired or your clients are emotionally stretched, it can feel risky to ask people to look back over a hard year. It actually needs to help, not just stir everything up. We're going to zoom in on what's actually happening under the surface when we invite reflection, what it does in the brain and nervous system, how it can help people make sense of hard experiences, and how it helps work through grief. Naming what we feel helps regulate the nervous system. There's some really interesting brain research showing that when we put our feelings into words, literally just naming them, the alarm system in the brain quiets down a bit and the thinking part of the brain comes on. So when we ask, what did I carry this year? What hurt? We're not stirring it up just to stir it up. We're actually giving the nervous system a way to move from chaos toward calm. Psychologist James Pennebaker did a series of studies where one group wrote about neutral topics, things like their schedule, and the other group wrote honestly about stressful or painful experiences, what happened, how they felt, and what it meant to them. What they found was interesting. Short, structured reflection can help people process big experiences, reduce stress, and even support physical health. The key is how these reflections work. They guide people to name what they carried, what hurt, and what helped, so that they can start to make sense of their experience and gently notice what they want next. One of the findings I appreciate from Pennebaker's study is that participants often reported emotional distress during the writing, but ultimately they found it to be valuable and meaningful. It made me think back to when my daughters were little and we put them in infant survival swimming classes. We lived in Florida where pools are everywhere, and we really wanted them to have the skills to handle it if they fell into the water. During the lessons, every child would cry whenever the instructor had them pause. It sounded awful for those few seconds. Like it makes your heart hurt to see them struggling. And you just want to say, okay, that's enough. But right after that brief distress, they do exactly what they were being taught. They'd float or roll or swim to the edge, and then they'd cry again at the next pause and then do it again. So, yes, those moments were uncomfortable and even distressful, but that's when they were actually learning what would keep them safe and confident and above water. And eventually, they stopped crying at the pauses and they just took joy in the process and their progress. Reflection can feel like that too. A short spike of discomfort that over time can help you stay afloat a little more easily and slowly make space for hope as you work through the grief and other hard parts of your story.
If you work with men, you might be wondering if these reflection practices will resonate or work with them. The good news is that research shows that when men do this kind of quick, structured reflection, they benefit just as much as women. The difference is mostly in how comfortable they feel getting there. So the barrier is often getting men to try reflection, not whether reflection is helpful for them. So let's talk about some ways you can make it more accessible for men. You can frame it as short check-ins or mind dumps rather than a diary or entry or journaling. Men feel comfortable with this wording. And let them know bullet points count as well. Keep it concrete and time-bound by saying such things as take 2 to 4 minutes to jot down a few words, rather than write about your feelings, other words men may not resonate with. Emphasize usefulness rather than introspection. You can say, this is a quick way to clear mental clutter or sleep a little better or to stop carrying everything in your head. Versus, this helps you get in touch with your emotions. Normalize the awkwardness. You could say something like, this might feel awkward or pointless at first. That's okay. Just keep going for another 30 seconds and see what shows up. Get a few honest words down, and that's a win. Offer non-writing options. They might just speak what's on their mind instead of writing it. Or maybe suggest they use talk to text. Connect the reflection to their roles and values. You could say something like, getting honest on paper can help you show up more fully as a dad, partner, or leader. Not just, this is good for your mental health.
Thanks, Niles. So, whether it's male or female clients or providers, these kinds of reflections are about giving real grief and real experiences somewhere to go. Reflection is one of the ways that people can move through deep grief. Not move on, but move through. And grief research backs that up. PhD in mental health therapist Daniel Bates talks about 4 tasks of healthy grieving. They're outlined by psychologist William Worden in his book, Grief Counseling and Grief Therapy, a handbook for the mental health practitioner. Worden's first task is accepting the reality of the loss. While initial denial is normal, it can't make the loss disappear. So acceptance is the first step toward adapting and moving through grief. The second task is working through the pain of grief. Dr. Bates notes that for whatever reason, we're afraid to feel in our culture. We go to great lengths to avoid discomfort, but that just compounds the pain. Allowing yourself to feel your emotions and taking healthy steps to process these feelings is necessary to move through grief. Dr. Bates says, sometimes even after accepting a loss and the fact that life isn't the same, after your marriage ended, or your friend moved away, or your work laid you off, or in our clients' cases, your child was lost to abortion. Some people feel if they adjust to life without the loss, life without their child, that they're betraying them. I remember talking with a man a few years ago when it was just a few months after his partner had chosen abortion, and he was in deep, deep grief. I spoke with him again recently, and he shared that he was really struggling now because it felt so unfair that he could get to move on, do new things, have a new relationship, keep going when his son couldn't. Dr. Bates says that can leave people stuck, and that adjusting and adapting to the new normal is essential to moving through grief. Warden's fourth task of grieving is finding a lasting connection to what was lost while embarking on a new life. Dr. Bates says that even though what you lost is gone, it's still a part of who you are. In abortion healing, we encourage people to memorialize their children in some way. A name, a letter, a small ritual, or a place of remembrance. Something that says this life mattered in a way that fits their belief and comfort level. Grief expert David Kessler adds that for some people, embarking on a new life includes a later stage of finding meaning or finding purpose in the pain. And for many of you here today, that can involve helping others who are struggling after abortion. The reflection tools we're sharing with you today sit right in that space. They help you as providers and your clients name what's real, feel what you feel, and begin asking, what does this mean for me right now? And what do I want to carry forward? So with those concepts in mind, we didn't want to just talk about reflection. We want to give you something that you can use with your clients and for yourself, and an opportunity for you to do that for yourself today. So here's how we're going to walk through these tools together. First, I'll give you a brief overview of each tool. We'll address how you can use them, and we'll role play some of the tools to show how they might sound in real life. As we're role playing, we encourage you to notice your own thoughts, memories, or emotions popping up. You can jot them down or just sit with them. And after we present each tool, we'll invite you to share a few words in the chat about what landed for you or how you might use this in your setting. Only share if you want to and only what you're comfortable with.
Before we get into the details of the first tool, which is for you all, for providers, let's just take a minute to discuss the best practices in using reflections like this with your team. When reflections move into that personal territory, there are some real HR, liability, and team dynamic considerations. Even in healing-centered organizations, the workplace is not a clinical or pastoral space. And I've seen well-intended reflection exercises lead to oversharing, breached trust, and lingering awkwardness within teams, all in the name of healing. Without clear boundaries, reflection can unintentionally create emotional exposure that leaders are not equipped or meant to hold. So, to protect trust and boundaries and your team's health, and with our HR and liability in mind, the best practices are these. Encourage the reflections to be completed independently and privately. Make it clear that sharing is optional, never expected or required. And if a reflection begins to bring up something heavy to the surface, encourage the individual to seek support from a trusted person of their choosing, a counselor, a spiritual director, a personal support of some sort.
Thanks, Kylie. These are such important tips to consider. We're going to start now with a provider reflection. It has 5 questions, and I'll zoom in to describe each one. After we walk through the tool, we'll talk a few minutes together about it. So feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat at any time. And we're not going to role play for this one because, as Kylie said, in a provider team setting, they would work on it independently. This tool is called What Am I Carrying? Members of your team may have carried a lot this year, clients' grief and their own life stuff. We all can be pretty good at pushing through. We show up, we do the next thing, but that doesn't mean it isn't taking a toll. So this is a chance to pause and be honest with yourself about what's on your shoulders at work and at home. You can give yourself and your team permission to break this all up, to pick 1 or 2 to focus on so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. But we're going to fly through it all. So don't feel overwhelming right now because you can take your time later to go through piece by piece. All right, so the first question is to check what you're carrying. It could be about work, your personal life, or other situations or challenges. And the first section on this part is emotional load, like compassion fatigue, secondary trauma, cumulative grief, and emotional labor. When you print out the handouts you'll receive, you can check whatever feels familiar and fill it out as you like. For now, you might write it down on paper or just keep it in mind if something strikes you. So let's just look at a couple of examples of what someone might have come up for them. Emotional labor. Someone might think, some of this is at work, but I'm the default fixer in my family and everyone needs something from me. Or maybe they're feeling secondary trauma, like some of the clients' situations are really heavy. Some of them just keep playing in my head. Next is mental and identity weight. Identity fatigue, moral distress, decision fatigue, doubt about whether you're making a difference. And again, you would just check what fits for you. Examples might be decision fatigue. Between work, home, and extended family, I feel like I make 100 small judgment calls a day and it wears on me. Or identity fatigue. With the divorce this year, I feel like I'm constantly holding it together for the kids and then also trying to show up here. Some days I don't even know who I am besides the strong one. The third section is relational strain. It may involve boundaries, isolation, or feeling overwhelmed, overloaded. Examples might be isolation. I'm surrounded by people at work and home, but I don't really have anyone to talk to. So even though I know it's not healthy, I still hide my feelings. Or boundary strain. I say yes to people even when I'm exhausted or just don't want to. And then I feel resentful or snappy with the people closest to me. And the last section in this first part is spiritual tension, like feeling disconnected from God, pressured to perform faith, guilt or shame for not doing or being more spiritual. Now, when you share the tool with your team and you encourage them to complete it on their own, like Kylie emphasized, if parts don't fit, tell them to just skip it. Normalizing that and emphasizing that every part is optional was especially important for those of you in social service agencies or public or secular organizations, as well as those of you whose agencies may be faith forward, but maybe not everybody on your team is. So this question might not resonate with everyone, but for others, it could be very important. Examples of spiritual tension might be something like, for disconnection from God, lately, I feel like I'm just going through the motions spiritually. Or for guilt and shame, I keep thinking if I really trusted God, I'd be handling this better. And that just adds another layer of guilt. Now for question 2, what resonates most right now? You would just think of 1 to 2 items that feel heaviest. Someone might say isolation and worry. Maybe they're worried because they have family members dealing with a medical issue. And their mind and heart are half here at work and half at home with their loved one. And maybe they feel alone because they think people are tired of hearing about their challenges. Number 3, what do I need? Think about what would help you carry those things differently or even set them down. Maybe it's a break or friend, journal, cry, prayer, a playlist. Maybe someone often goes from heavy client interactions straight to meetings or a project, and they might write that they need more margin, maybe time to breathe a little, take a walk outside, or some other pause so that they don't carry that tension all day. Number 4, what's one thing I no longer want to repeat? Think of something that holds you back from healing, disturbs your peace, or leaves you feeling drained or diminishes your hope. Examples could be something like, I want to stop answering emails late at night so I can actually rest and reset. Or I want to stop listening to news on my way home or before bed because it just agitates and stresses me. I remember a friend once deciding that her biggest stressor was leaving the dishes until morning. It made her whole day just start with, ugh, and her mood lifted when she cleaned up after dinner or at least before bed. This last reflection on this tool is one word I want to carry forward, something healing, grounding, or hopeful. For some, it might be seen or joy, rest, support. Think about what that word would be for you. So now we'd love to hear from you. If you like, in the chat, feel free to share one thing this reflection tool stirred up or one thought or insight that spoke to you. or a way you would use it with your team. And while we give everyone a chance to put their comments in the chat, Niles, I'm going to tap on you. You shared something when you first read this handout. Can you share that with everybody?
Of course. Like Michelle mentioned, we all went over this and I was really excited to give it a look and I really loved this reflection tool. I felt like not only because it's so in depth in many different ways of what you may be carrying, but because also it resonates with me as well. I felt it was very insightful and it gave those who participate multiple perspectives. And then as I took the time and looked over it myself, I realized there are some things within myself that I needed to work on as well. And I told Michelle these things and shared these comments, and I told her I really appreciated giving me the opportunity.
Thanks for sharing that, Niles. Margaret, do we have any comments in the chat that you want to highlight for us? I am one of those people who turn off the chat, so I can't see.
Margaret's on mute right now, but John shared caring for the caregiver. Self-care is a priority. And Karen shared that her one word moving forward is grace.
Oh, I love that. Grace is so
And
important.
Marianne shared that in terms of spiritual tension, she just keeps reading a book called The Soul Keeps Score, and it helped her to identify a moral injury trauma and spiritual injury trauma as a way to consider traumas that might not meet all the criteria for PTSD.
That sounds really interesting. I've read The
Yeah.
Body Keeps the Score. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, so much. We are going to move on to reflection tools for clients. We're providing you with two versions, one secular and one religious, so you can meet your clients where they are. If you know which they'd prefer, or if you're doing a specifically secular or religious group, then choose that one. And if not, just show your client the two and let them pick which one they prefer. We are going to bring this one into real life, and you can listen in on how this conversation might sound. Kylie is going to join me with this role play. I will be the provider and she will be the client. For this exercise, we're going to alternate using the secular and religious questions so you can see a little bit of both, and you'll see them both on the screen. But when you're working with a client, as I said, you would use one of the forms. And as we role play, you can reflect upon the questions for yourself and also think about how you could see walking clients through these reflections. And for both this role play and the next, I want to challenge you to listen for 3 things or steps that the provider does. And we'll talk about those later. All right, here we go. Thanks for coming in today. Since we're near the end of the year, would you be open to walking through a reflection page together?
Sure, as long as it's not like a test.
Definitely not a test. There are no right answers. This is just a way to put a few things on paper so they're not all stuck up in your head. You can skip anything that doesn't feel right, that doesn't fit for you. Okay? The first question is, what did I carry this year? Think about emotions, memories, or struggles that were with you this year. You don't have to try to fix or explain, just name what's been real in a few words or sentences.
Heaviness, guilt sometimes, and actually exhaustion.
Oh, yeah. Heaviness, guilt, exhaustion. Those make a lot of sense with what you've been through. You can jot those words down. The next prompt is, God, this is what hurt. Jesus' love and compassion are big enough to handle our pain. So you can be honest with him. What's been heavy or stayed on your heart or mind this year?
Well, I think I've shared this before, but it's really been a rough year. And there were a few times that were like really bad, like when my friend announced her pregnancy and Mother's Day. I did not tell anyone, but that really hit hard.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are really tender moments. You could write that down in whatever words come to you. And we can talk more about that in another session if you'd like. Now it shifts to what helped me keep going. Even small things count here: people, moments, routines, certain words, tiny comforts, anything that gave you peace, a sense of peace, however brief.
Probably my dog. Like walking him just got me out of the house. And a couple of those like really good late night talks with my sister.
Those are great examples. Dogs, late night sister talks, those absolutely count. Go ahead and jot those down. This part asks, what am I ready to let go of? You don't have to carry everything into the next season. Think about what you can lay down at God's feet.
Maybe, maybe just the idea that I should just be over it by now. I mean, that's just kind of going on repeat in my head.
Yeah, that is a really painful script to keep playing. Writing that down here and telling God, I surrender this to you. That's already a kind of letting go. The last question is, what would I like to make room for? Hope doesn't erase pain, but it does help you breathe a little easier. What would you like to grow or feel more of next year? It might be a word, an idea, a goal. What comes to mind?
The word peace and maybe just a little bit less shame.
Those are beautiful. Peace and less shame. We don't have to know exactly how that will happen today. We're just naming what you'd like to make more room for. And we can talk more about how we can help you get there in the next session. So tell me, how was it to walk through this? Be honest.
Uncomfortable. That kind of good uncomfortable. Like I actually said what's been in my head.
That's great. A little uncomfortable reflection, like you said, can be a good thing. And you did great, naming what you've been carrying, what hurt, what helped. That can help you make sense of experiences, and taking the time to gently notice what you want next to keep growing sets you well for the next season. Great. Thanks, Kylie. Each of these versions wraps up with an optional closing activity or a prayer. You could say, thanks for your openness to walking through this reflection. Let's take a moment to close out with a prayer if you're doing the religious version, or if you're doing the secular version, you could say something like to close out with a short grounding activity. So the optional closing activity for the secular version is to take a few slow breaths with your hand over your heart. Gently tear or fold up your letting go note. You don't have to say anything. Just notice this moment and that you've made it this far. You are allowed to heal at your own pace. You are allowed to feel whatever you feel. And the optional closing prayer for the religious version is, thank you, God, for carrying me through. I trust you with what's next. And a blessing. May you walk lightly into the next season, carrying what gives life and letting go of what no longer serves. You are valued. You are worthy of grace. You're loved, and healing is possible. So now we'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions after walking through the client reflections. Feel free to share in the chat what spoke to you or how you might see using it with your clients. And also let me know if you spotted the 3 things or steps that I did as the provider. And Niles, you shared comments after you saw these, so I'm going to ask you to share again with the group. What did you think when you saw the client forms?
Of course, I feel like they're really compassionate and they reinforce the idea of moving at your own pace with self-awareness and no judgment. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to that, especially for clients and as well as what I like to think about myself personally. And then I also think that the religious version is a great way to allow people, especially those who are strongly guided by faith, to not judge themselves too hard. Sometimes we're hard on ourselves and force ourselves to move at a pace we aren't ready for. So I felt this is a very compassionate approach.
Awesome. Thank you, Niles, for sharing that. Margaret, do you have any impressions about the tool that people wanted to share?
A really good question. Someone asked, if you do it with a virtual group, would you suggest sending out the worksheet first or show it online and then follow up afterwards?
That's a great question. I think for me, it would depend on what my plan is for the session. If I've got my time all mapped out, then I might do one session to introduce it and suggest they do it at home. And then the next session, open it for discussion of whatever they'd like to share. If you have the time and the inclination, you could go through it, but I don't know how it felt for you trying to go through it in this quick time. So maybe whatever you feel with the clients you have in your group and how they've participated in the past might lead you to decide.
Yeah, Michelle, when you're thinking about that, I mean, I think about myself because of doing the role play with you, and you really have to know your client. If they are going to emotionally process or overthink a tool like this and maybe pre-decide what they're going to share, even subconsciously, like maybe they're going to try to perform instead of feel, then that might be your invitation to let them process together with you and to help them to feel first instead of think first.
That's a great idea because I think that when I need to do something quickly, that first thought that comes in, and you might just go ahead and share that if you're just doing it at the same time you present it. And that might be the most real thing, but then maybe I would think it differently if I took a lot more time. So, yeah, I like that idea. Thanks, Kylie. All right. So, did anybody put any ideas for what the 3 steps are? Because I'm going to tell what they are. No? Okay. These are 3 steps that we do on the after abortion line, and you do it when you engage with clients. The 3 steps are all part of active listening, and they help the client to feel seen and heard. You want to mirror what the person shares with you, validate their experience and feelings, and offer follow up, especially when they bring up something heavy. Since this is a quick reflection, you don't want to leave them hanging, so you can let them know that they'll have space to dig into it further later on or at another time. And then make a note of that so you can remember to circle back to whatever it was that it brought up for them. Okay, one more piece that we've built into this is a gentle follow-up. We know that grief and nervous systems don't run on a one and done timeline. So we created a 30-day check-in, a way to circle back a month later and gently notice what's shifted or what hasn't and where you want to grow next. It's not a test. It's a way to honor the fact that healing is a process. And this can be used with both the providers and clients who have completed the initial reflections. So Margaret is going to join me in this role play as we illustrate how you might use the 30-day check-in tool. And you can watch for those 3 provider steps. All right, so I'm the provider and Margaret is the client. Here we go. Last month, we used that year-end reflection page to look at what you'd been carrying. Would it be okay to circle back and notice what's changed and what hasn't?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Let's start by glancing at what you wrote last time. What were the 1 or 2 biggest weights you named back then?
It was guilt and loneliness.
And how heavy did the guilt and loneliness feel then?
It was pretty heavy. I was really hurting and felt like I couldn't talk to anyone about the abortion or what I was going through.
And how heavy do they feel today?
It's still there, but it's not as sharp all the time, although there are days when it definitely spikes.
Okay, so still heavy, but maybe a tiny bit less sharp. Thanks for sharing that. It really matters. And we can definitely talk more about how to move through that guilt and loneliness. The next question is, what feels the same? Some things take a long time to shift, and that's okay. It just means you're dealing with hard challenges. So think about what still feels painful, tender, or stuck right now.
The guilt can pop up fast. I still avoid talking about it with my friends or my mom because they just don't get it. And one tells me to get over it, it's no big deal, and the other says I'm horrible for what I did.
That can be so painful. It makes a lot of sense that it's part of what's keeping you stuck. Thanks for being open about that. We can talk more about how to cope with your family and your friends. Healing often comes in tiny bits, like more space to breathe, one more spiral, a little less sharpness, like you mentioned. What, if any, emotions, thoughts, or situations feel even a little lighter or more manageable?
I'm not crying every night, and I don't feel quite as crazy for still thinking about it and it hurting so much since we've talked about how normal that is.
Those are really important differences. Not crying every night and feeling less alone in how you're reacting, that's real movement.
Thanks.
Next, it asks, when you look back over this last month, what do you think helped you keep going? And what made it harder to heal or rest?
Helping was coming here, honestly, and going for walks, making it harder, doom scrolling at night, that always makes me feel worse, and also just being so busy.
I'm so glad that talking and going through Keys to Hope and Healing is helping. Walking is great. Good for you for keeping up with that. I remember you said you were going to start. And I hear you about mindless scrolling and staying over busy. I've definitely done that too. And I agree. It makes me feel worse and more tired. The next part is, what do I need for this next stretch? Think about the next month, not the whole year or forever. What kind of support would be most helpful? You can look at the ideas on the form or come up with something else that's meaningful for you.
The big thing I circled was self-care, but what I think I really need is a slower pace. Not just more sleep, but to stop filling every moment with doing something. Another part of that is to stop saying yes to everything. Maybe it'd help to at least choose one night a week that I won't make any plans, even if I feel guilty about saying no.
That's really insightful. You're not just saying, I need self care, you're naming what that actually looks like for you, a slower pace and one protected night with no plans. I also hear how honest you're being about the guilt that pops up when you say no. That's really common, but it doesn't mean that prioritizing yourself is wrong. It just means that your brain and your body are used to you being on for other people. This next question asks you to think about just the next week or so. What's one tiny, realistic step that you're willing to try that might help you carry things differently? And is there a word or a phrase that you want to carry into this next stretch?
Hmm. Maybe my small step is putting my phone down earlier a couple nights and going for a walk instead. And my word would be gentle, like being a little more gentle with myself.
I love that. Phone down a bit earlier, a couple of nights, and gentle as your word. Thanks, Margaret, for doing the role play. Appreciate it. In this role play, the client did share something that felt better. But this last box is perfect for when your client says nothing feels better. I mentioned last month that I love the word yet. I encourage you to use it with your clients and yourself. It is such a hope-filled word, and it's particularly impactful when you're in that negative speak mode, like nothing feels better, which then leads to a sense that it will never get better. So adding yet, nothing feels better yet, adds that hope and expectation that it will, just not yet. So this part normalizes that experience. It says, if your answer to most of these questions is, honestly, it all feels the same or heavier, that's okay. It may simply mean this wound is deep and deserves more support. And the last sentence, consider sharing this page with someone safe and saying, this is where I'm really at. It's great if you or your client are working through the reflection on your own. If you're walking through it with your client, you might replace it with something like saying, I'm really honored to be a safe person for you. Thank you for walking through this with me and sharing what's going on and where you want to go. And I'll keep being here for you so we can help you keep moving through this grief. Okay, now we would love to hear from you all. As you listen to the 30-day check-in role play, what popped up for you? Go ahead and add your thoughts or even a word or phrase into the chat. And while you're typing, I'll share this. When we first planned this training, we knew we wanted a provider tool and a client reflection tool. And then Kylie suggested having a 30-day check-in, which I think was really wise. I don't know about you, but I have been to plenty of retreats and workshops where I leave with a notebook full of insights, and then it goes on a shelf and I may never look at it again. So the 30-day check-in is a built-in way to circle back, so those reflections don't just fade. They actually get a chance to deepen and shape what comes next. Do we have any comments in the chat?
Yeah, one that's really sticking out for me is Cheryl shared that her version of your yet is meanwhile, God is at work.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I saw that and I was like, that is a really cool way to think about something.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna write that down. Are there any others we want to highlight right now?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I got so excited. Tina just really is enjoying the way that, Michelle, you're doing your mirror, validate, and offering. It just shows compassion for the clients. Just love that she was able to observe that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Margaret, you got to pick out one of your favorite ones since I stole my favorite too.
I love Mary Ann's comment that this is very helpful to have the 30-day check-in. Said they're fabulous resources and thanks so much for the timely work.
Awesome. Well, that is a perfect segue into the 1 p.m. email, and the recap will provide the links to all 4 of these reflection tools. And remember, it's okay to only pick 1 or 2 reflection questions at a time. And for your clients, you could do it as a journaling prompt, a group activity, a quiet one-on-one conversation, whatever works with each client.
So before we wrap up, we want to give you a second to check in with yourself. And if you're comfortable, we talked about this, type 1 word in the chat for what you are going to take from today. Might be a feeling, maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's just something that you're trying to remember for those dark moments.
I'm going to be taking that meanwhile God is at work.
Yeah, Terry said gratitude. And actually, it looks like we have a lot of gratitude in our group today.
Great.
We have a tenderness, compassion, a not yet, hope, wait, love, wait, Michelle. Isn't that our season right now?
I like that. Yeah, it's Advent, so wait.
John said God's mercy is fresh each day.
Love that.
It's such a mixture. We just see so many of you thinking about that word, that phrase, that thing you want to remember. And that mixture, all of it's valid. This is exactly what we're trying to get out of this tool. It's not about fixing things, it's about giving our hearts and our nervous systems a place to just land for a minute.
We've done some heavy emotional work today. Thank you for sticking with it. Let's take 10 seconds for a quick grounding moment. This is what we're going to do. Put your feet on the floor, soften your shoulders, and then we'll do 1 slow breathe in and out, and we'll repeat it. And you'll start on the next slide. When it comes on, there's a visual that will show you when to breathe in and when to breathe out, and we'll do it 2 times. And as you breathe, silently finish this sentence. For this next stretch of time, whether that's next year, next month, the next hour, I want to make a little more room for something. Could be rest, honesty, laughter, prayer, boundaries, whatever you need. Okay, feet on the floor, shoulders relaxed. Now, let's go. You for participating in these grounding exercises. Reflection can bring big feelings to the surface. So as you wrap up reflection with your clients or yourself, it can be good to go through 1 or 2 grounding exercises like this, because grounding helps your body and your brain calm back down. So you leave feeling steadier and not stuck in that intensity.
Thank you. Just thank you. Thank you for all the ways that you have shown up this year, all the ways that you've held stories and you've sat in the messy middle with people, and for always being willing to reflect on your own load too. Our hope is that these tools give you so much permission and space as you offer all of that to everyone else that you care for. So we're grateful that you spent time with us this hour, and we're here for you as you keep walking with women and men into the new year. May the next stretch of time be a little bit more gentle for you and for all that you serve.
Awesome. Thank you, Kylie. We're going to move into Q&A. We do get questions in the chat, and we also get direct questions. So Margaret.
Yeah, we have a really good one from a little earlier where we were practicing the reflections. Someone asked, would you recommend that participants find their emotion in their body?
Yeah, we even talk about that in our books. I know that was in Finding Solid Ground, where there's an exercise in the video of Finding Solid Ground. I don't remember the video, but you should watch them all, where it talks about going from head to toe. What am I carrying in my head? Are my shoulders hunched up to here? Is my back tight? And thinking of what those emotions are. So definitely, and go read and watch Finding Solid Ground.
Let me
Oh,
add to that for a moment because I just recently had just a really good conversation about this. And it's just important. I want to just put a little plug in here that it's really important to approach this with curiosity and consent because we are caring for people who hold a lot of trauma in their bodies. And sometimes body awareness can feel very overwhelming. So you always want to like really create an invitation, make sure that it doesn't feel like a requirement and allow people to stop or shift their focus if it's needed. But yes, everything you said, Michelle, but also
absolutely.
realize you're caring for people with physical trauma.
Yeah. Always being trauma informed is critically important. So thank you for sharing that insight, Kylie. Margaret, what's our next question?
What would you say to a provider who realizes while doing this worksheet, I'm actually not okay, but they still need to lead groups and see clients?
We've had that come up. I think that encouraging them to debrief with another provider that they trust, or our healing support specialist, Karen, would help in this situation. Open up a conversation about how they responded on the worksheet and how it's affecting them mentally, physically, socially. Encourage them to place boundaries around work and self-care and discuss ways that they could do that and take care of themselves. And also, if it gets too overwhelming, you could encourage them to finish the group they're currently facilitating. Maybe there's somebody who could be a co-facilitator to help with that weight. And then maybe they could take a break after that group finishes, or find another facilitator to replace them for another group that might be scheduled to come up.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. As an ED, I've had this happen, and you need to ask yourself, like, how is this person going to show up safely? How are they going to show up ethically? And Michelle said sometimes you're you're going to need to immediately have a solution, immediately have a co-facilitator, immediately support that person in a different way. And so often we just try to push through. Like we think that's our role as facilitators, but it's not. You're not meant to be the strong one. You're not meant to be the person that sucks it up while everybody else is getting cared for. And we need to normalize that more.
Awesome. Thank you, Kylie. Margaret, do we have another question?
I do. If a client's 30-day check-in shows that things feel just as heavy or heavier, what would you see as good next steps? More reflection, a different kind of support, or referral?
That's a great question. So think of the 30-day check-in as like a compass, not a grade. You can let that guide you on what the client might need from you or someone else. So if things are the same or worse, as we talked about, start by normalizing that and then be curious. Can we look together at what helped and what got in the way this month? It might be like what Kylie said with the other, there might be an and in there. It could be that the next step is a both and. You keep doing what you're doing and something else. Might be maybe you're doing one-on-one and maybe it would be a group, or maybe a professional counselor, or more consistent check-ins. And be aware of anything that could be a red flag, like suicidal thoughts or self-harm or severe depression. And then a referral to a professional mental health counselor could be really important. And you could frame that like, you deserve more support than one relationship or one program can give. So let's build you a team. Thank you so much for being with us today. You really enriched our conversation and these reflections. And we wish you the happiest of holidays and a joyful new year. And we look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you.